56 Farewell Street. It's a 2.5-story house. I was born in the house in 1918. This house is a little bit different now. It's one of the Doris Duke houses. It now has a huge chimney in the middle and fireplaces. They were not there when I lived there. At the time, there were no electric lights in there, no power at that time. We had gas lights. In order to get the gas, there is a meter in the basement of the house which has a dirt floor, and you would put quarters in the meter to have the gas come on. Of course, gas lights were a problem because they had a mantle that always seemed to burn out in the nighttime, and you never had a replacement. I lived here with my mother. My father died when I was 2. I lived here with my mother, and I had 3 sisters and 2 brothers. Helen, Emily, Marion, George, William, and I was the youngest. The lot to the south of the house we used, and my brother and I had what you might call a truck garden, I guess more like a wagon garden. We raised vegetables, sold them to the neighbors in the area. You'll notice if you're looking at this house, there's a millstone or part of it used for a step on the south side. When I was there, that was in the middle of the yard. I guess it covered a well. There are pictures of some of the family sitting on the millstone. Directly to the north of 56 is a house that belonged to an Edward Carr. He ran a linen supply, coats and aprons to the restaurants and markets in the area. Things were not prosperous in those days. My mother was a widow, and she did sewing for Mr. Carr next door. Now, directly opposite 56 Farewell Street is now a tremendous red building. It's a duplex. It's old. Probably the first duplex in the area. I can remember when we were small, we used to go up into the attic in that house with Louise Gregory. She was the daughter of the Newport police chief at the time. And this was on Halloween. We would go up and hear ghost stories up in the top of this house, this duplex house. Street, and I'm opposite number 7 Water Street. And when I lived here, in this parking lot or area just to the west of the house, there was a plumbing shop. My uncle was the plumber. The next house down the street, number 5, Charlie Ward and his wife lived there with their 3 children. Charlie was a librarian at the Naval War College all of his working career. I'm now on Poplar Street on the east end. And you'll notice on the north side tiny little building there. It must be number 5. When I was growing up, initially, there was a cobbler shop there, a Mr. Grobman. When he died, the house was either rented or sold to a lady named Alice, alleged to be a lady of the night. This house number 7 that I'm right in front of now has a huge backyard which backs up behind some of the houses on Farwell Street. This was a great gathering place, particularly in the summer days when the days were long, and all sorts of games went on there in the backyard. Pick-up baseball, horseshoes. We organized our own sports in those days. It was great fun. I'm now parked in front of number 3 Bridge Street, the John Stevens house. When I was a youngster, there was another addition at the corner of this house that went out to Cross Street. And there was a black man there ran a paint and glass shop. My brothers and I, we needed this shop quite often for panes of glass that we had broken. This shop was located right opposite on Cross Street from where the Arnold Park is now. I'm now on Elm Street outside of the Potter School building erected by the trustees of Long War. It's now the Department of Human Services for the state of Rhode Island. I went to this school. I also went to Callender School, which is at the corner of 3rd and Willow, and also to Mumford School on Farewell Street. Of course, now they're all turned into other uses. I'm now on Poplar Street, and I'm in front of number 52 Poplar Street, which is a dwelling now. When I was, I would say, about 12 or 13 years old, I went to work here. I worked after schools in summers for Mr. Burton Little. My brother George worked here also. When we finished furniture, Mr. Little bought and sold antique furniture. Not only did we refinish furniture, but we worked in many of the estates in Newport, particularly in panel rooms. We were quite often called to refinish the panel rooms. At that time, we hand scraped these panels and refinished them. Now, getting back to 52 Poplar Street, it's right across the street almost from St. John's Guildhall, and I can remember every week, one weekday, the day escapes me, but with the windows open in the Guildhall, I could hear the boys' choir running the scales under the direction of Mr. Ball. Now, to the east of 52 Poplar Street, the house, the red house at the corner of 2nd and Poplar, there was Mr. and Mrs. Ray Groff lived there at the time, the 2 children. I can remember them. Mrs. Groff is around. Really directly opposite 52. There's a white house now, and the Morrisseys live there. The only name I remember is Marilyn because she's about my age, and she lived right there across from my shop. Now on Willow Street, in front of number 5 Willow Street. This is where Mr. Burton Riddle and his wife Alice lived. They lived on the 2nd floor. At that time, the house was heated with coal fires. My brother George and I worked for Mr. Riddle. It seemed like it was almost 7 days a week. When I left Mr. Riddle to go into the draft, in fact I was one of the first volunteers from the city. I think I was half trying to get out of this job I was stuck in, and I was making $10 a week. We had to come here and carry coal upstairs. In the barn that's side of this house set back, he kept a string of pointed dogs that had to be taken care of. In the loft of the barn, he raised pigeons for squabs, and each Sunday we were required to go there and kill the squabs and clean the feathers and get them ready for the table. Mr. Riddle also owned the house at the east end of Willow. It's a gray building now. I guess that was number 1. He also owned the lot behind it. Now there's a good-sized house back there, but in my time, that was a stable. It was built for a stable. It was a little bit smaller than that. And we had a pony ring around the building, and people paid to ride the ponies. And I have pictures of myself and young Emmanuel riding horses in there. At number 3 Willow Street, it's a very dark painted house, almost black. I can't recall the name of the people that lived there at the time, but the man had a particular talent or a hobby where he poured sections of concrete, and while it was still wet, these sections would be about 2.4 inches square. He'd make designs in them with colored glass, broken glass. They were quite attractive. I can remember looking over the fence. They were standing everywhere. I don't know whether he saw any, but they were quite attractive. I'm now on Chase Street, in front of number 2 Chase Street. Just to the south of number 2, there's a parking area here now. But when I was a youth, there was a little shop there. Mr. Langley, he made ice cream, lollipops, all of those great things that we loved. Ice cream, you could get it for 5 cents then. It wasn't a bad deal. And he made his own syrups, I understand, to put into the candies. Mr. Langley. I'm now on 2nd Street, in front of number 35, which is on the corner of Poplar. You'll notice it appears, if you look at it from 2nd Street side, it looks like a house with a gigantic addition on it. When I was a youth, this addition part, which would be the southerly part of the house, That was a store, Mr. Nimzau ran a mom and pop store in there. I'm now at the corner of Elm and 3rd, and I'm looking at a shop called the 3rd and Elm Press. That, in my youth, or growing up, that was a barber shop for Mr. Basil. We'll erase that. Vincent. He owned that barber shop, and he also lived in the house, and he was open till 8:30, 9 o'clock at night. He would go in, and I guess at that time he listened to the radio, and he put a coal shovel against the door so that when you came in, he'd know you were there and you were coming in to get a haircut or a shave at the time. Incidentally, speaking of the radio, I'm going back to my house at 56 Farewell Street. Of course, there was no television, and we having no power in the house. I can remember we did have a radio. In order for the radio to function once a week, a gentleman came with a new automobile storage battery and placed it underneath and hooked it up. So for another week we had radio if we wanted it. A little different programs then. From there on Bridge Street in front of the One Line Restaurant and Tavern, I'm quite sure I've got the right building. If it's not this one, it was the one just to the west of it. That this was Westall's ice cream shop. You know, they had those nice wire chairs, little marble tables. You could eat it there or take it out. It was pretty good ice cream, very rich. Westall's ice cream. I'm now at Battery Park. I'm in the driftway that goes down to the water, to the Blue Rocks, they were called. That was a great time. And if you look at the Blue Rocks, there was a cut in the rocks, and it was ideal for floating your own little homemade boats in there, and you're quite safe. You could swim down there. Now, just to my right, which would be the south end of Battery Park, there was a stand here, a building, I would say it was maybe 6 feet by 20 feet, and it opened up every afternoon and into the evening. The two ladies ran this, and they sold all sorts of snacks, mainly penny candy. It was a great place to come. You stepped up on a little landing so that you could see into the cases. They were glass-covered cases. They would pull a rope to lift them up, and they sold all those great things like green leaves and squirrel bars, and maybe they had Mary Jane's in, I'm not sure, but it was a great place. There's a lot of walking around in the evening. It was, people weren't uptight about going out into the night. The night belonged to us. We could go where we wanted. There was no vandalism. We were reasonably decent kids in those days. I'm now at the corner of 2nd and Sycamore, and I'm looking at 114 2nd Street, 2.5-story house. I lived there from, I would say, about 1931 when my mother passed away until 1940 when I went off in the service before the war started. I lived there with my sister Marion Hollis and her husband Jack. I'm looking at some of these gigantic hedges. I see most of them were down now, but at the time they were all around the property, and they grew so fast that with clippers, there were no electric clippers then. By the time you got finished at one end, you look back and the other one is ready to go again. Now from this house, when I lived there, I loved to walk, and you could walk down towards the water at the end of Sycamore Street and take a right, and you could walk yourself all along the seawall in front of the Naval Hospital complex right up to Train Station Road. Now, of course, it's all blocked off. There's somehow a bridge got in the way, so you can't do that. Then, out in the harbor, of course, we used to have the Navy ships tied up out there with buoys, and the four-stacker destroyers were there, nested together. I had a lot of pictures of these four-stackers out there, but I lost them now. And I can also remember one time when there was a lot of airplanes that had pontoons on them, and there was a flying fleet, and it came in one weekend and stayed here. They all landed. So many of them, it was hard to count. It was quite a sight to see. The other thing I remember that with the ships out there, many times they had these searchlight displays where they all put these searchlights and waved them, the light beams back and forth overhead. Sort of like an opening of a movie in Hollywood, only this was much more spectacular. I'm now at the corner of 2nd and Van Zandt Avenue, and I'm looking at this greatly refurbished house here on the corner. I think you carry a picture of it in the green light. But of course, as you all know, there was a store there belonging to the Spire's sister, and it was a great help to us growing up there, that little store there. But this refurbishment is really spectacular. I'm now at the corner of 2nd and Walnut, and I'm looking at number 36, the tiny house. That was, I can't remember the year of it, but that was a tragic thing with a rape and murder in that house. Very elderly woman. I'm back on Poplar Street now in front of 54 and 56 Poplar, where I'm sure most of you all know that Ralph and I can't think of her name now, it's sad. The Arnolds lived here in one of the houses with their two sons, and I guess they rented the other one, but I think one of the Arnolds is still here in the rear. There's another house in the rear of these. But they were great citizens and sailors with catboats, which I don't see any around here anymore. But they had 2 or 3 at a time. In fact, I went out a couple of times on them. Mrs. Arnold was a great swimmer. She used to swim across the bay once a year. She was very active, kept herself in great shape. I'm in front of number 12 Poplar Street now. I believe this is the home of the Bergamos. They raised two boys and a girl. Two boys were lawyers. Sal was with Moore Brother Lynch until he passed away. I just passed a little house on top of the street, I think it was number 15, where James Easton used to live. He kept chickens forever in the backyard. Nice man. Taught me how to tie my shoelaces when I was a little guy. And he was the one I didn't pick up right. I've never done it right since. This little bit should have been back in front of 52 Poplar Street, the shop that Mr. Burton Little owned and I worked in. I can remember every summer back then they had on the point what they call Old Port Days, that's P-O-R-T. And it was like, sort of like a fair. The ladies dressed up in various costumes and walked about, and I remember we used to put a lot of the antique furniture out on the sidewalk, and it was quite an activity at that time. Old Port Days. I'm on Fame Street now, and I'm looking at the west side of it. I'm in front of number 57. I'm not sure of the location, but within one of these houses, maybe a little bit further along, there was Integlia's Market on the first floor of the building. Quite a thing to see in those days. They sold everything. They sold meat, fuel oil, coal, coke, cheese, everything all in one store. That's where you'd come in the middle of the night. If your gas mantle burned out, you could come down there and get one. Great boys in Integlia's. There were quite a few of them. One of them was Dr. Integlia's, a chiropractor. Great guy. He took care of all football teams. He was always there whenever Rogers or Delassalle were playing, running out, little short man, ran out with his bag to take care of the people on the field when they were down. I'm at the top of A Street, looking across Farewell at the Friends Meeting House, which is being refurbished over there, which is a great thing. That building, through the years, has been almost everything imaginable. My earliest thought on it, there was a woman named Manuel, I think. That was his last name, Manuel. And he had a museum there with stuffed birds. Willie, I guess his name was William, Willie the Bird Man. At the corner of Thames and North Baptist Street, the house on the east side of Thames, this at one time looked a little bit different, and there was a furniture store here, used and new furniture. It was owned by Manuel Brothers, last name Manuel. And now, on the dock at the corner of Long Wharf and Washington Street, which was the spot of the Florida line warehouses where the ships docked. We so was happy to see that recently, the slides of great ships. Of course,
Behind me, across Washington Street, was the railroad yard with many, many sidings and spurs. And of course, that's other than freight, the greatest thing I remember is that's where all the circuses came in. They pulled in with all the cars, and everything was unloaded, and the circuses at that time were down in the Fifth Ward, I think where Spencer Park is, somewhere in that area. They moved around. There was a lot of open areas at the time. And of course, everything walked down. All the elephants walked down. The horses pulled the wagons down there. And then, of course, you watched them unload and went to the performance, and then you came back. And at night, you had to be down back in the railroad yard and watch them load up. Those were great days.